over to the tank tuning then, because that has happened.
Tank tuning. Oh, this is a fun one. I just love thinking about it, honestly. It's like, alright, tank tuning. Sorry, Vengeance Demon Hunters have been bugged for the whole expansion. Sorry about that one. We now have to adjust literally everything to make up for it. It's so strange, like.
Yeah.
I mean, especially the origin of it, where if I'm correct, I believe it was that the Vengeance Demon Hunter was also benefiting from the Havoc Demon Hunter Demonic Wards, which reduces magic damage taken. So they just had extra magic damage reduction. Like, cool. Thanks very much. But then also the tank tuning is... It seems so strange to be in the middle of a 9.0.5 patch, but I guess it shows a decent bit of agility in how they're willing to solve these problems. But I mean, man.
Yeah, that is something I have liked.
Yeah.
Blizzard have been really agile at just bonking problems whenever they've arose over the last few months. Now, there's a bit of me that thinks like, but that's going to be taking dev time away from the next patch. But people playing the live game right now, it's actually been pretty sweet, them being pretty active. That said, I'm not a tank. I can't feel this change. I'm a marksmanship hunter. It's what I do. So, yeah, I like them changing things up. It's funny, on the topic of them changing things up, we just got a buff. And, it's not Wowhead's fault at all, because I think people are interested in what the 95th percentile of mythic rating parses are, because it's interesting to see what the best of the best do. And to be fair to Wowhead, they do always talk about the methodology biases in the DPS Warcraft logs rankings that they post in their weekly updates. But I just remember whenever we got our buff, I think it was last week, you look at the mythic raid parses, and marksmanship hunter is still down here, right? It was quite low. Same for the other hunter specs.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, yeah, well, I can go in and top a meter, no bother. What happens if you go and look at heroic rating, 75th percentile? Marksmanship hunter is no longer at the very bottom. It's now, it's way further up. So it's an interesting thing where there's this player perception seemingly now that marksmanship hunter is like the other hunters, a piece of shit. It's doesn't do good, not needed, whatever. It's totally different from how it was great at the start. Whereas like, no, you can go in there as an MM hunter and do incredible good work. Sure, we're not the top of the meters, but not everybody playing an MM hunter is going to be playing mythic rating at 95th percentile parses. Yeah. So it's just that thing where the balance stuff is always really interesting to talk about.
I
always want to put a grain of salt in it though and moderate it down a little.
Yeah, there's one fun thing I'm kind of thinking there, where if it's specific buffs as well, like specific buffs to an ability, depending on what level of player you are, what gear you are, and how you actually play, like that, say it was like a 5% buff to aim shot or something, was it? Or I can't remember, something like that, was it? I can't remember.
Yeah, something like
yeah,
that.
It was something like that. But that actually means so much more for players who, whatever way they play, aim shot is 50% of their damage versus what it might be for a different player, be that 70% because they don't do anything else, or like 20% because they get massive amounts of damage from trinkets or different procs. And don't know if you guys heard that, but there's definitely fireworks going off outside and police sirens.
Yeah, it's a standard Northern Ireland experience.
Hope there were fireworks.
There's another one.
Yep, there's another one. Definitely sounding very close and getting less sounding like fireworks. We'll take a look out after and see.
Yeah, hopefully we're not going to be bombed.
Oh, yeah. Let's not talk about that on YouTube.
Somebody said 75th percentile is not something you should look at. I'd say there, if you look at 95th percentile of mythic rating, then there is one bias of what fits the mythic rating encounters, but also, yeah, you are getting clarity on what the best people in the world are getting out of these specs. But there are biases in that, because the best people in the world will flock to the best specs, and that will exaggerate the 95th percentile, rankings. Yeah. So there is a bunch of stuff there. I generally say, like, if you're a regular player and, you don't think that you're a member of Echo or Limit or something, you're probably not going to be playing in a 95th percentile. So for something, a more realistic picture of what you could actually be doing, maybe don't look at 95th percentile.
Yeah.
There's certainly times in the past where, the 95th percentile play of, say, a warlock in Mists of Pandaria, that involved being really good at at snapshotting your dots and stuff like that, which your 60th, 70th percentile player maybe's not going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, the Afloc's actually a very good example, because I remember the YouTube video of, I can't remember his name, but the dude who played Afloc went in to fight the, what was the name of the council fight in Siege, when you come out after Shadow of Pride?
Sparklanker? Was that?
Yeah. And did that fight naked on an Afloc and in it was either LFR or Flex. It was Flex, and was just like 3 times doing more damage than other players naked, because just that's how extreme the difference could be between play. But I think you should, especially if you're trying to compare your own DPS or how you're playing, you should look at similar item levels, similar talent setups, and sometimes similar gear, because the sheer amount of difference in how a class can be executed based on even things like stat weights can be insane.
Yeah.
Like, especially when it comes to some classes that are significantly weighted one way or the other, there can be massive differences. So like, if you look at, say, the top mythic players, and you're like, okay, we can see from these numbers that, Frosty K is performing 20% below where we'd like them to. Here's a 20% buff. But that's targeted in such a way that players below don't get the same benefit, because that's like a specific improvement to say Breath of Cinder goes to damage up by 20%. That's going to be massive that's going to be a 20% buff for the top players who are maximizing uptime there. But for players who drop it randomly, or players who are running like Obliteration instead, that's just going to be a significantly smaller boost in damage. So it's like, ideally you're looking for some sort of snapshot at certain levels, or where possible as much data as possible, because it's just, you can't balance for Mythic, because that leaves other players in the dirt.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to take all of that into account if you're looking at it from either the average player perspective or from the death perspective, because otherwise you have that massive gap of, I mean, even Windwalker Monk kind of has that, especially with some of the bugs. They had that in this expansion so far, where it's just Windwalker trash, ultimately pointless, no one play them, and then you just see like, why is like the top DPS in these fights, in these dungeons, Windwalker? Aren't they shit? And it's just nah, it's just these players learned how to squeeze the most from them. So I think it's
it's that thing where it's very, very easy to see a chart and just grab an opinion off that chart. There are far more things to consider. The mathematical limit of a class might be reflective of what the best players in the world can do. It's not going to be reflective of the vast majority of the player base, and then if Blizzard was to actually balance the game like that, there would be clear issues. So it's it's an interesting situation.